You want to know something, Dratnos? I actually took your name on the alpha server.
I figured that was you, actually.
Well, I actually deleted. I deleted it. Is it not free anymore?
Oh, I don't know. When did you delete it?
Days ago.
Okay, I tried to make it like 2 days ago, and it was for it was.
Oh, well, okay. Well, somebody else has had a great idea and scammed you. All
Well,
right.
now.
Anyways, so for those who've been living under a rock the past couple of days, Dragonflight Alpha has been launched. There's also a decent number. There was a lot of interviews that happened the past couple of days. Wowhead specifically had a really good group interview. We're going to link it down in the description. I would highly recommend going and reading it. It goes through a lot of different things, such as like the testing time frame. It talks about like dragon riding professions, Mythic Plus dungeons returning and stuff like that. The biggest thing, though, that I think that they talked about, and so we had a lot of stuff that we could have tackled, and I think the biggest thing, though, that they talked about was the testing time frame. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So basically, the TLDR is, we've been worried for the past little while about the timeline of the expansion launch, right? Given that we know it's supposed to be by the end of the year from the pre-order page, but the alpha beta timeline, especially before alpha came out, was starting to look a little sus. It was going to look like it was way less time than any previous expansion has had in alpha and beta. And in the kind of, especially in these interviews, they've addressed a lot of that concern, or at least, talked about it.
Exactly. And I think that the biggest thing is like, okay, so this is a group interview, and then Ian addressed this. So the question was, you're targeting the Dragonflight release date for the end of year 2022. How comfortable are you feeling with that target window? I think we're feeling comfortable. We wouldn't have announced it if that wasn't the case, especially after the delay of Shadowlands a couple of years ago. I've definitely heard and seen concerns with the community of, oh, is it too soon? Is it going to be rough? And I understand that, solely looking at alpha/beta timelines and how that might be the case. But I think if you take a step back and think, oh, is this 2 years after the last expansion too soon for the next? Well, no, that's in line with historical precedents. And I certainly think our players are ready to move on later this year from Shadowlands to the next thing. So I think that whenever I read that, it made the most sense, because it's like they've been developing Dragonflight for a very long time, and I don't think that players are normally understanding of that. And so it's like, and in addition to that, I believe that Ian is absolutely correct. I am ready for Shadowlands to get out of here. I am certainly ready for a new challenge in Dragonflight.
Yeah, so I think that there's some tension here because, is Dragonflight going to be more ready because people want to leave Shadowlands sooner? That doesn't help with that at all, right? In fact, I think that's a lot of the concern that people have is like, oh, are they going to rush us here because they, because people don't want to play Shadowlands anymore? Maybe they're hemorrhaging subscribers or whatever, whatever clickbait somebody wants to put out about it or something. But like, does that mean that they will then rush the next one too, right? And get us into like out of Shadowlands too early, because not because Dragonflight's ready, but because Shadowlands is ready to be done, right? So that's I think something that shouldn't really be looked at too much. I think the big data point here is that they are doing alpha and beta differently. Like it's a different type of dev cycle than before, which I think this was the most likely thing, because again, nobody held a gun to their head and made them put 2022 on the release date if they didn't want to, right? So like they chose to promise it for 2022, and I assume that means
So
they're expecting that's going to work out.
Exactly. And the next question that the group interview from WoW had asked is like, this kind of change of pace from how you developed the game in the past, what was the thought process in making that change? And did you feel like you needed that change in the way that you were doing, you went about your alpha and beta? And then like the biggest point is like, we wanted to focus on the feedback that we get rather than having an alpha that's sparsely populated and sparsely attended. Over the course of the alpha, we'll have week/weekends where zones are the focus, this dungeon is the focus, etc. And we think that we can get more feedback, offer better experiences for our testers, and have more structure in terms of what they're asked to do and stuff to check out. In contrast, in the past, we'd often have a couple of weeks at a time where there wasn't anything going on. We'd see concurrency drop in the content creators and folks struggling to do new things, and then we think that they can just be more focused and a constructive experience all around and still get what we need out of it and more. And so I think that I've noticed this like already. So first off, they're dropping the alpha in waves, and like they've on the Warcraft Twitter, they've announced these 2 waves. They have these great graphics for them, and they talk about the things that are available for testing. And so, like, initially, we have right now, as we're recording this, we have the introduction zone for Evokers, and then we have 2 dungeons in Neltharis and Uldaman, and then Shaman's talent revamp, and then like some profession stuff has also popped up. And
yeah, and notably the stuff that was in phase 1 is not for testing anymore, like
yes,
the Azure span, right? Like that's I guess Drakthir evokers and stuff are still in, and all the talents and stuff haven't gone away or anything like that, but the the Azure span was for phase 1 and now it's gone and it'll come back later at some point. But yeah, it's a focused testing type thing.
They've also been a bit more aggressive with the amount of people that they allow onto the alpha. This is also a bit weird to talk about. So how it's happened before is like there've been like friends and family lists of like Blizzard employees is like the first wave, and then it just would kind of sit there for almost like 2 or 3 months, or I guess Ian said a couple of weeks, right, in this interview. And like nothing would really happen, and it would only be those people on the alpha. And now what's going on is like they're even with this second phase, they've already ramped up the amount of people that are on the alpha. It's not like an insane number of people yet. Like they're going to be like beta key giveaways and stuff like that as the beta cycles is really further develop. So it's not like an insane number of people, but there are already more people on the alpha on the second week than I've ever seen on a second week alpha launch for a new expansion.
Yeah, it's definitely it does. It's a good sign for sure. It's what we needed to see for the game to be, reasonably releasable this year without me being worried. Is the alpha being like? I mean, it's also fairly polished, right? We're looking at, sure, not all the class talent trees are out, but the ones that are out, it's like 90% or more of the talents are actually working. Which, you go back to like old alphas, it's like, oh, half the stuff is not implemented yet, whereas here it's like almost everything's implemented and there's like 1 or 2 talents that aren't yet. So
how are you feeling about this? Because I've been thinking about this a little bit lately. Do you think that the expansion is like, I don't want to say ready to launch, but were you surprised
I think they'll
with
hit
how
the
far along
timeline.
it was?
No, I think that this was what I expected, given that they chose 2022 as their release date.
Yeah, sure.
I wasn't one of the doomers that's just like, oh no, they because like, I don't know, again, like Blizzard chose to do it, right? Like
yeah.
I don't know. I think that you'd have to be pretty, and there are a lot of people who are like pretty who give pretty low respect to Blizzard, right? But like I at least like I think that given that it was so recent when they said 2022 that yeah, I assumed it meant something like they were this far along. And yeah, it does feel like the alpha is, I mean, it's way farther along than Shadowlands alpha. I don't know if you remember version 1 Shadowlands alpha or anything like that, but yeah, that was
we only had like 15 quests from Bastion for testing, and then 1 dungeon, and that was it for like a month.
And the specs, like there was a lot of bricked stuff in the specs. There were a lot of Covenant's abilities weren't even like implemented yet. Yeah.
So my general thoughts on it is like they're really far along with a lot of the stuff. Like, so I suspect like the dungeons, the zones, all of that is very far along. The things that I'm a little bit concerned about are like the classes. Those are the things that I'm kind of worried on. I think they have about half of the classes finished at this point, talent wise. But one of the big things that I want to be able to see is like, how are they going to iterate on feedback in regards to these classes, in regards to like these talents? Are they going to be able to give them the appropriate time that they need, where it's like, okay, they really do need a little bit more time for feedback purposes? Or are they going to be just kind of quick on the trigger with things that they don't like? They see, okay, this is not working, we need to be doing this differently, and then they like change some of the talent stuff immediately, because they're like, to their credit, they're already slamming down changes to like Hunter and things. Like they are looking at talents that aren't working or are getting very poor reviews. I think Guardian Druid, Death Knight had a couple of changes, and Feral have also had a bunch of like a number of changes. And so it's like the talents that have already been released, they're already starting to iterate at least on some of the talent trees and some of the specs. So I think that the classes are what I'm concerned about right now. It's less about the zones and stuff like that, because what I've seen from the zones, it was very surprising.
Yeah, and they definitely like are not off the hook in terms of like they do need to go through and actually, do full feedback iteration. But yeah, like you said, the ones they've done so far have been good, and there's more than enough time left in the year to do it right. Like it's not a very high, like you don't need that long in terms of time. You need a lot of effort, but you don't need that much. It's not like it needs to take like 6 months to do a full iteration on all the classes or anything like that. It's just a question of like, can you actually bang it out in the time that's there?
I mean, especially with things like this where it's like they're doing these in like phases. I wonder what they're going to start doing whenever they get to the rounds where they need people to like raid test or Mythic Plus test. I think that those are going to be the ones where you need like a lot of bodies, because like for this stuff, you do need like a decent number of people to go through and like test this dungeon on heroic or whatever, make sure the questing works for the Azure span, that kind of thing. But in reality, it's like they can go back and test these later. They can test leveling just as a cohesive leveling system later as well, and they'll be able to fix that. I wonder how it's going to work with the systems that they need like a lot of people for.
Yeah, I mean, I assume the beta invites are going to keep ramping up, right? We're going to keep having more and more people on.
Yeah,
and keys hopefully soon. At least one thing that would be nice soon would be level 70 talents when we zone into dungeons as well, because we get scaled up to level 70, but we don't get all the talent points, so that kind of inhibits the ability to actually test the like end game builds of different things. Yeah,
I mean that kind of falls in line with like the only thing I'm worried about right now are the classes. Like the rest of the stuff that I've seen, it's great. Big fan of dragon writing, big fan of the zones. The dungeons, we'll leave those for a different day. But I think that the dungeons themselves.
I mean, we've only tested 2 as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think the dungeons are like, they're not bad. Like they're not bricked or anything, right? Like they're complete. But like the classes are the things that I'm certainly worried about. And then the fact that we don't have level 70 talents is another piece of that, which is like, okay, they should at least allow you to be able to test the builds with like full level 70 talents. So for those who don't know, like basically you're getting up to maybe like, I got up to like 65 or 66 whenever we were testing Azure Span. And so I had like 27 talents for my spec tree. You're going to have 30. So you weren't able to test like full builds, and these are like 3 talent points that you're putting into the most powerful stuff at the bottom, and your capstone points. And it's like, okay, that it was really awkward, and it's like I feel like you're going to be limited in the amount of feedback that you can give based off of that. Sometimes,
I mean, it's fine. Like they should test having less talents especially for like leveling and for the leveling dungeons. But like in these dungeons, we're getting scaled up to 70. We should get the 70. Like the heroic dungeon. If you're testing that, it should be with the 70 talents as well. But that's the kind of thing where I'm sure that that'll be fixed towards soon.
Were you kind of surprised with how Evoker felt? Because I think most of us have played it a bit. I was playing it.
I've only played like red damage Evoker and only on target dummies, so I haven't done any dungeons on it yet. I'm hoping to change that at some point very soon. How about you? Have you played blue Evoker at all, or healer Evoker?
I have not played blue Evoker. It's from what I heard, it's quite undertuned. I've just been playing red damage Evoker as well. Yeah,
red is really fun, and it feels really good for M+, right? Like big AoE.
I did do a decent amount of dungeons on it, and I've also, so for the record as well, like I've also played dungeons with like preservation and other people on devastation. Hey, it took me a second. I keep calling it destruction. I played some dungeons as devastation and with other devastation evokers, and so like I feel like I have like a pretty good read on it. It's really interesting how far along it is. And I was worried that they were gonna announce like this class and it wasn't going to be really ready, but this is by far, I think, their most fleshed out class in regards to what it is. It's crazy.
Yeah, like the talent trees are like fully implemented for it as well, unlike a lot of the other classes.
Well, as they should have done. Like honestly, as they should have done.
I mean, it is a pretty close to fully fleshed out class. Of course, there's going to be a lot of discussion about it, and people are going to have things they want to change about it. But like for an alpha offering of a class, like it is not the kind of alpha where it's like, hey, we're half done with this, you can come play with it early. It's like, hey, here's the full first draft of it. let us know what you think. And obviously it'll change somewhat between now and release, but like it's not waiting on Blizzard now. It's waiting on feedback and then a balance pass or whatever.
Okay, I guess the other thing that needs to definitely be iterated on is the UI. So they actually did the UI changes.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to say a lot of the changes that they made are buggy, but there's like some stuff that's like not fully implemented yet, and then some of it's like pretty buggy. Not pretty buggy, but like there's some stuff where your cast bar gets like locked to random things and it's like stuck. Like for me, my cast bar was like permanently stuck to the bottom of my screen, regardless of what I did with my UI. And there's stuff like that. I do think overall the UI changed pretty good. Not going to complain, and I suspect that they're going to get it into a spot where it's fully functional with what they promised and what they wanted to show us. But it's one of those things that like it is definitely an alpha. It is certainly an alpha. It's a lot further along than I thought it was going to be, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good sign. Good sign that the alpha is looking like this, and a good sign for us as well, because now we'll have a weekly build of alpha with new stuff to talk about. Easy video content for sure.
All right, cool. So we'll be back next week. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet. We decided that we wanted to talk about like the testing time frame, tackle that as like the bigger fish fry. If you have any recommendations for what we should cover in our next video, leave those down in the comments below. Any final parting words, Dratnos?
Goodbye.
All right, goodbye.